When the pandemic essentially shut down society in 2020, people were beginning a new normal. And for some, that included being diagnosed with cancer. Fighting cancer in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic looked differently for different patients. And this month, we're going to be telling you their stories. First up is Naimas. She is a mother of two who thought at first she had COVID. For Naimas Cano, family is life. Her world are her children. And in June of 2020, Naimas was navigating her new normal with her family like so many of us, working from home and remote learning.
With the pandemic, being at home and having the two kids at home and doing, like working from home and doing homeschooling and everything together, I felt that it was too much. And that's why I was all the time like very tired.
She thought likely COVID. But one Saturday morning, when she couldn't even get out of bed, her husband rushed her to the ER. Testing revealed she had acute myeloid leukemia, or AML, a cancer that starts in the blood-forming cells of the bone marrow. A diagnosis her oncologist at Baptist Health Miami Cancer Institute says is rarely seen in someone in their mid-30s.
When they told me you have cancer and it's very advanced, I was like, okay, cancer is not going to kill me. He got the wrong person.
And what would follow would be an aggressive regimen in the height of the pandemic that included chemotherapy, a stem cell transplant, and being away from her children for 2 months.
We had to keep her away from her family. We had to keep her away from her kids because she absolutely did not have any immune system for many months. And even the smallest cold, especially COVID, could take her life.
Naimas' husband stayed by her bedside for a month of that, leaning on family members and FaceTime with their children.
When someone is undergoing treatment for many months, having emotional support from your relatives and physical presence, human presence, is very important. So I can only imagine just how stressful and lonely it was for our patients.
For these patients, human interaction consisted of Dr. Lila Linares and her staff.
It was hard. I mean, listening to the diagnosis by myself and being by myself pretty much in the hospital for 2 months.
But Naimas says she knew she would be able to get on the other side, leaning on her faith.
I see everything like with a happy face now, like because I'm actually living my life.
A life that feels richer, looks brighter, and feels healthier.
It's a miracle. Like, honestly, I am a miracle.
And Naimas says she is doing well now. She urges everyone to listen to their body because sometimes we keep moving on, putting off the messages that it's sending us. And next week, I'm going to introduce you to a spunky 8-year-old girl who got really tough news at the age of just 4.
And a lot of that really begins in here. You have to stop, you have to process, or in that instance, a parent process. And at that point, you just got to be a good patient. You got to listen to your body, listen to what your doctors are telling you, and fight just like Naimas did. And she is a miracle. So great story to share. Thanks for that.
When the pandemic essentially shut down society in 2020, people were beginning a new normal. But for some, that included being diagnosed with cancer or going through treatment during that time. Fighting cancer in the middle of the pandemic looks so differently for different people and patients. And this month we've been telling you some of their stories, like 8-year-old Maddie, who got really tough news at just 4 years old. There she is.
I love to ride horses, draw, and spend time with my puppy.
Like any 8-year-old, Madison Nunez is full of energy and life. A life that's come with challenges. This is where Madison isn't like most 8-year-olds. At just 4 years old, Maddie was told she had acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
The way that they explain it is you have your white blood count and you have your red blood count. And Maddie had purple cells in her body as well. So you have the white, the red, and the purple. And the purple are Mr. C cells, which are cancer cells.
I like purple.
She likes purple, but not those purple, right?
In 2018, Maddie couldn't break a fever and had swollen lymph nodes in the back of her neck. Her mother, Melissa, took her to the pediatrician's office, and after a week of testing...
When you're hearing the words leukemia coming out of Dr. D's mouth, what runs through your mind?
It gets me every time. You're very scared. It's every time I still get, the watery eyes, and
I cry because of her.
She cries because of me, not because of anything else. But it's very scary because, once again, at that time, Maddie was 4. And you're scared for her. what's to expect, what's to come.
What was to come were 2.5 years of treatment under the care of pediatric oncologist at Baptist Health Miami Cancer Institute, Dr. Dured Dagestani, or Dr. D.
Is the most common cancer in children. That's why acute leukemia is something is very well known. And thanks God, these days, 2022, 90% of the children with acute leukemia are cured.
The treatment included chemotherapy, and when the COVID pandemic hit, Maddie's parents had to remove her from school.
She couldn't go through all the chemotherapy that she was receiving, and if if she would have gotten COVID, it would have been a lot worse for her because we didn't know how immune compromised she would be.
She did some remote learning, but by that point, she was already behind.
Maddie, how you feeling these days?
Good.
Good.
Very
Just a little tired of school.
And while not a fan of school these days,
I love my teacher and I love my friends. The thing is, it's too long.
Maddie's family is just thankful she's back to a more familiar life, using her experience to drive her forward. Maddie just turned 8 in March. She's 1.5 years in remission. Something Dr. D mentioned, if you have a child and they have a fever that doesn't go away between 48 and 72 hours, then seek medical attention. Next Wednesday, I'm going to introduce you to a mom who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in the height of the pandemic, and she has a message to every single woman, something you'll want to hear.
We always talk about listening to your body, advocating for your children, and going with that mom gut or that parental gut. But in the middle of a pandemic, there were so many unanswered questions, you know, and then we're seeing the story on the other side. So we're glad that Maddie's doing well and that she's sharing her story. So thanks for that.
Welcome back. Every Wednesday this month, we've been highlighting people who were either diagnosed with cancer during the height of COVID, during the pandemic, or were fighting through it. Now, we all were living with new normals during that time, but these patients, for them, it was the fight of their life during that historic time. NBC6 anchor Sheli Muniz introduces us to Lily Mae, who survived what doctors call the silent killer.
Lily Mae today is very different to the Lily Mae before my diagnosis.
It was spring of 2020. COVID-19 was officially declared a pandemic. And within weeks, 56-year-old Lily Mae Stokes Prosper would receive devastating news. Stage 3 ovarian cancer, severe and painful bloating, consistently tired, just some of what she was feeling.
I am a little bit chubby, but I went from a little bit chubby to looking like about 6-7 months pregnant. And I had no idea what was going on.
Lily Mae, who is originally from Trinidad and loves to travel with her husband, found herself essentially trapped inside of her South Dade home.
The only place for about 18 months, maybe more, that I went was to Miami Cancer Institute.
Relying on FaceTime, phone calls, and distance visits with her family.
When I tell you nobody has come to our house, inside of our house, we have a table at the front door. Deliveries, we have friends who brought us food and, different things, flowers or whatever, everything went on that table outside the door. They would go bye-bye, my husband would pick it up, wipe it down, and we bring it back in.
She couldn't risk getting COVID. Her body was now undergoing 6 rounds of chemotherapy, including a high-PEC procedure. It's essentially a heated chemotherapy bath, the solution delivered directly to where the cancer was located.
What makes ovarian cancer so dangerous?
The biggest challenge with ovarian cancer is we don't have good screening for it. So cervical cancer, for example, has a great screening test, the Pap smear.
It's often why you might hear it referred to as the silent killer. Gynecological oncologist at Baptist Health Miami Cancer Institute, Dr. John Diaz, says 85% of ovarian cancer is detected at stage 3 or 4.
Some of the symptoms associated with ovarian cancer are pelvic pain, abdominal pain, getting full early when you eat, bloating. A lot of these symptoms probably you and I experience today.
So symptoms are often associated with something else. Luckily, Dr. Diaz and his team were able to remove the cancer from her body and save her life during a time when the health system itself was up against a deadly disease. These days, Lily Mae is still cautious, but working to save someone else.
Listen to your body. Make sure, this is making me emotional, but make sure that you advocate for yourself. You know your body. If you're not feeling right, then you're not right. Something is wrong.
Sheli Muniz, NBC6 News.
Some good advice there. Well, next Wednesday, we'll introduce you to a local teenager who kept experiencing back pain. She struggled to get answers, and when she did, it wasn't the news she wanted to hear.
Welcome back. We have been highlighting people who were either diagnosed with cancer during the height of the COVID pandemic or fighting through it. We were all living new normals during that time, but for these patients, it was the fight of their life, including Margot. And it all started for her with back pain. 17-year-old Margot Palma's life is quite different than it was in 2019.
It was just like a lot of restless nights where I couldn't sleep because of like all the pain.
Margot was 14 and couldn't understand why she kept getting back pain.
Several doctor's visits and like nobody really knew what it was.
An MRI would later reveal it was Ewing sarcoma. The tumor was on her sacrum.
Ewing sarcoma is a type of sarcoma that most commonly occurs in teenagers and young adults. It is the most common primary tumor arising from the bone in children.
Dr. Matthew Hall is the lead pediatric radiation oncologist for Baptist Health, Miami Cancer Institute, and Margot's doctor. Receiving the news from doctors brought Margot mixed feelings.
I was kind of like happy because it sounds weird, but I was kind of happy because
you had answers.
Yeah, you had all these people telling you that it was a number of things. And it just like, I knew like in my gut that what they were telling me, what it was, it like didn't feel right. And I knew that it was more than that.
Margot would get diagnosed while on Christmas break during her freshman year at Miami Palmetto Senior High School and had to withdraw from school even before returning. And then the pandemic hit, suddenly being isolated from her large and close family.
When COVID happened, I wasn't allowed to see them. And it kind of took like a mental toll on me and also like my mom.
While isolating, Margot says the pandemic also made her feel less alone when it came to wearing a face mask and being extra cautious with germs. She'd undergo chemotherapy and radiation, including proton therapy, which is pinpoint radiation to reduce exposing her pelvic organs.
I think Margot's concerns at the time were largely about how do I get through this?
Ewing sarcoma is incredibly rare. Dr. Hall says under 250 patients a year.
Most children are expected to survive their cancer diagnosis, and they will grow up and they will have many years ahead of them.
Margot, now a thriving senior, and she has her sights set on college.
Kind of like a once in a lifetime experience because not everybody could say they went through what I went through.
And she went through it, and we are wishing her continued health. Margot she is so special, and I'm so glad she's doing well. By the way, Dr. Hall was telling me that he has more people who've suffered from bone pain just from falling on the playground as far as kids, or just having fun than the number of kids who are actually diagnosed. So just don't be alarmed just because your kid has a back pain. I mean, this is a very rare condition, but the moral of the story here is just always listen to your child's concerns and their complaints.
And listen to your own body, right? You know, something is back pain. If the red flag goes off, we say this all the time, just have a conversation with your doctor. It's worth that extra step. Glad that Margot is doing well. Great story there.